Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hit Refresh Business Resilience in a Post-COVID World, presented jointly by Mint and SAP. Today, we talk about the challenges that businesses have faced and continue to face thanks to the pandemic. These last few months, business leaders have been in a fix trying to create a balance between delivering revenue targets and maintaining employee health and safety. The challenges have been unprecedented, and the only saving grace has probably been technology. Digitization has been the key to finding a method to this madness. I'm sure our experts will have lots to share on this topic. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel of thought leaders. We have with us today Mr. Thulasiraj, Executive Director at Aravind Eye Hospital, Madurai, Mr. Pradeep Cholayil, MD at Cholayil Private Limited, Colonel H.S.Shankar, MD Alpha Design Tech Private Limited, Vagish Dixit, Mr. Vagish Dixit, Managing Director and Partner at ALPLA India Private Limited, Mr. Vinod Palakkil, South Regional Director Sales at SAP India. A very warm welcome to each one of you and thank you for taking the time out to join us in this session. I would like to start with a question for all our speakers. What digital tools have become indispensable for you in the last few months? How have you viewed digitization and what are the tools that you've been sort of relying on? Mr. Cholayil, if you'd like to.
We were being in the digital media for the last 2 years. We have been already been present in the digital media. So we believed in the social media network, and that's one area which we are focused. And in the pandemic time, we focused more on the social media because the viewership in the television channels were it's not the best of it. So we were in the social media. And we produced films, especially for the social media advertisements. And we thought that's the best way to reach out to the people. So we just did not believe only in doing social media, only in Facebook, Instagram, and all those things. But we also bet upon spending money on Amazon, so that Amazon is where people were more and more frequently visiting in the pandemic times. For their buying of their whatever requirement they were there. That was one of the area. E-commerce was becoming quite popular during the pandemic time. So people were more dependent on e-commerce. So we also focused on Amazon as a area of this thing. So that's one important thing we think. And also we were also present in the other OTT platforms also. So OTT platforms also was becoming more and more viewed by people during the pandemic times because none of the theaters were open, and OTT was the only platform which people had the opportunity of viewing any films or plays, all those events and all those things. So OTT was the only platform. So we also focused on OTT platforms, and these are the different areas which we focused during the pandemic time.
So, Mrs. Cholayil, you spoke about from a consumer lens, from a marketing lens, digital has been your mainstay and a big focus area for the last few months. But what about, and Mr. Dixit maybe, what about the company, the internal processes, demand forecasting, inventory management? Digitization has a role to play across the entire functions, right? And many of these have seen a challenging time. So, Mr. Dixit.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. I think every company is different, and we are a manufacturing company where 95% of our action is in plants. So of course, these plants are fairly well digitally connected. What we have seen is, and of course, our demand forecast and everything is all digital anyway, pre-COVID as well. But a lot of our stuff, a lot of our equipment is all over the world, quite international, including India. So we found more and more use of variations of, to put it simply, Google Glasses kind of environment where you have virtual reality to fix problems, where you have engineers sitting in Switzerland trying to fix a problem in Hyderabad. We were a little bit lazy in the past. We would still have people coming in and fixing, and we thought it was super necessary. but we are finding to our delight that it can be done differently. Also, I do want to point out that connectivity between people is of course super relevant, and people need to meet. And now that we are meeting on on Zoom or whatever, what we realized in our work from home environment, that some of the basic simple things are very necessary. And Vinod ji will probably be doing this for a living, but not just software, you need very strong hardware. So our top teams have been given super professional setup at homes with strong bandwidth, redundancies, additional battery backups, all from our company, the ability to work across Zoom, Teams, Cisco, whatever. And also, we actually made an acquisition through this crisis period in Pune. My chairman logged in from my partner and chairman logged in from Europe for the inauguration digitally. We had teams physically, and some of us in Hyderabad, and our clients was Coca-Cola was sitting somewhere else. To get a physical and digital congruence into Pune in a rural area was only through a very dexterous technical methodology, which was very learning. And last but not the least, virtual independence program, where you have guys singing and entertaining 500 to 600 people across India, because we need the energy level of people up during this period, was probably a highlight. How to keep the internet connectivity. I mean, the famous comment in these days is, you are on mute, and if the singer goes dead, I mean, if the connection goes bad. So these have been some of our other, they sound simple, but you fall flat if you can't connect every day, 10 hours a day with the teams.
Very, very interesting. So, Mr. Ravilla, over to you. I mean, what kind of digital tools have played a role in your company over the past 9 months, especially in the case of healthcare? I think a lot of mission critical situations, telemedicine is something that has really boomed in the past few months. So what is your...
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of an understanding, even though we are a specialty hospital, we are heavily community centric. So by design, we don't have an appointment system. No, we are a completely walk-in kind of a facility. And then when the pandemic hit and lockdown was declared, we chose to keep the eye care going, even though it is an elective condition, because pretty much everyone else shut down, which means people with emergencies wouldn't have a place to go. So we chose to keep our hospital opening. So by design, we were becoming vulnerable to our staff and to other patients who come in. So we had to really pivot and put in a lot of systems in place. So for example, we introduced almost overnight teleconsultation process. We already had for the last 15 odd years teleconsultation from our rural centers to the base hospital. That is like a B2B kind of a process wherein you have control over everything. But then this was more like a B2C, where the patients could directly reach out. So we built that platform literally in 48 hours, very, very rudimentary, but then just to keep that going. We also had to put in place immediately a scheduling process wherein we could spread out the patients coming. Because when you don't have an appointment system, there's a tendency for all patients to come before 10 a.m. And then, so in the normal times we could handle it, but here this was posing a problem. So we had to do that sort of a thing. And then what was very critical was we are in 100 locations within Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, and in Andhra. So the rules and best practices and knowledge around dealing with COVID was rapidly evolving, changing literally by the hour. On top of that, you had the government telling us what you can do and what you cannot do. And that had to be respected as well. So the big challenge was how do we do all this across the system and then do it well and provide safety to our staff and to the patients who come to us. So there, I think this whole digital media and all the video conferencing tools that we have, Zoom and Google, and they became incredibly useful. So we had to deploy all of that, and overall, I think that's been a good thing because now pretty much everyone in the system, even outside the system, are very digitally savvy, which we can leverage going forward as well.
Very interesting. So as a result of taking all these actions and putting these processes and things in place, do you think you're in terms of the volumes that you were handling pre and during? I won't say post-COVID. You're not at post-COVID yet, but pre and during COVID, how has those volumes been? Has it gone down? Or?
Yeah. So it kind of plummeted down to zero for the first several weeks. And then, of course, we also took a decision not to let any of the staff go for multiple reasons, because these are hard times, and then we felt we had to stand by the staff. So every staff was on board, but then we made them come on a rotation. And then on the days they didn't come, they still got paid in full. And that was more because if one batch got infected or whatever, and they had to be, the early days government was extremely tough on positive cases, literally locking them up. So we didn't want the hospital to be shut down, so we kept that going. So the patient volumes was low. It was mapped very directly to mobility. When people said you just can't be out on the road, no public transport, the cases were low. But as that got eased, it is coming back. And now I would say it's very interesting. In the tertiary level centers, we are at about 70% of the volumes of the normal times. And as we go down the chain into secondary and primary, we are close to normal volumes. In the primary levels, it is close to normal volumes. So like with many things, what seems to be very critical to these kind of businesses or services is access.
Right. And you can only hold on so far in terms of getting your treatment, right? I mean, you can wait for a bit, but this is a medical treatment. So
yeah,
depending on the urgency. Colonel Shankar, I mean, so what are the digital tools that played a role? And you're already an electronics company, I'm sure heavily digitized in the past few months. Yeah.
So since we are a defense-oriented and aerospace manufacturing and R&D company, quite a few things have to be done in an integrated manner. So, for example, the hardware and the software and software integration to convert into a firmware, physical testing of this in some form has to be done with a man-machine interface. The one that could be, and we did do that, of course, is on the software side, which could be made out with the tools and all that being also made available to the various employees, selected employees, to utilize them from their houses, because some of the tools themselves are a little bit sensitive in its nature, but with certain precautions and all that we could make available to our own teams. And on that basis, the software could be developed. But hardware-wise, we had no choice but to do it on our own shop floors or through our subcontractors. Like Mr. Thulasiraj also mentioned, in the initial period of time of this COVID, we had a problem in getting the things done in the first about 1.5 months period of time. Gradually, we also shifted across into 3 shifts and all that, and keeping the distances and all the precautions and all that hardware was done. And the software developed elsewhere using the developmental tools in the R&D side, that could again, of course, be easily be ported by sending it across through the internet and then unloaded and again embedded onto the various software platforms. Again, this is one portion of the activities, but the more importantly on the management side, various tools are there which are used for management of the company as a whole, financial management, and then materials management particularly, including on the receipt of the materials and dispatch of the materials, ordering of the materials, and of course the price negotiations that could be done. more or less it has all been now, it is not across the table or face to face and all that. And already Mr. Dixit also already brought out as to the video conferencing and how it has cut down the unnecessary movement of people from place to place. And that is still continuing now, in the sense, what started off after about 2 months. People are even now reluctant to go and meet people. And if you, in fact, quite a few times, I myself have said, what can we do for you? Can't we do it on, digital means? And that is happening over here. And like what we are doing now, we are all sitting in our own places and then taking part in a panel discussion. Earlier on, probably all of us would have trooped into your studio and all that and sitting over there. That itself, as you would say, is a plus point. And the most important thing, since we deal with defense, I would like you to spare a thought for our troops there. When we had the sitting down in our houses, have the Lakshman Rekha and all that, they didn't have any of those things. They were there out in the open and doing whatever jobs that they were doing, and they are doing still. And one of the things which we developed, and I should thank the present, Chief of Defence Staff, General Rawat, who introduced that quite a lot of repairs and maintenance and things like that could be given by the industries through digital means onto the field formations, and train them also virtually, and as to how that could be repaired, and then given a training also for them as to how to go about. And that has made a big stride. And this is something which is which we had not realized, to be frank with you. And as it is, when you are faced with a situation, you will try to find a solution, and that's what happened over there. So it has been a very fine experience, I would say. And on that basis, now in my opinion, this would give a feeling for everybody to follow it even after the COVID goes off, because this has become the norm of the day. That is a plus point of this.
Thank you. So there's definitely going to be a major behavioral change. A lot of things we are doing today are going to remain. So some things are going to go back. And there are some cases where you need to meet people physically. I'm sure healthcare is one of them. But many of the early stages of, for example, even in healthcare can happen through teleconsultations, later moving on to a physical sort of interaction. Coming to you, Mr. Palakkil, I mean, I just wanted to sort of understand what digital tools do you think organizations simply cannot ignore today? I mean, you work with many companies across industries, and this is something which is your focus area. Is there any sector-specific examples you could talk about?
Yeah, like what Mr. Dixit mentioned, we sell technology for a living. At the same time, the most important thing is we learn a lot from all these customers, right? What we've learned is digital tools are mainly adopted to make an organization's process more consistent, more secure, more efficient and effective, right? This is the crux of why digital tools are used by organizations. And Roudra, this is not applicable to any sectors or anything, but this is applicable to each and every organization and every department within that organization, right? What we've learned is, first, the organization will need to identify the areas of improvements in their business process, keeping in mind their overall objective or goals that they have actually set, right? These could be the ones what is usually discussed within the boardrooms, right? Something like, okay, we have to grow, double our revenues in the next 3 or 4 years, right? Or we need to introduce new product lines into new markets which we have not ventured into, right? So once these goals are actually understood, a relevant digital tool will aid such organizations towards achieving those goals. And these goals are achieved, like I said, in a very quicker, very efficient manner by using these tools. For example, right, organizations think about, once they set their goal, right, does the organization really have a digital tool for simple things like conducting a recruitment very effectively, right, or efficiently, like what one of our panelists was actually mentioning in terms of do I we interviewed about 200 candidates, right, remotely, right? Does an organization have a digital tool to actually make purchase of goods and services in a very effective manner, right? Or do I have a system or a tool in place which can help me close my financial books in a real time, rather than waiting for a quarterly or making that a quarterly or an annual exercise, right? So Digital tools today, in summary, cannot be ignored. At some point of time, it applies to every organization in whichever way, possible, for them to actually achieve their goals. That's how I would like to, put this in a summary.
Thank you. Mrs. Cholayil, a question to you. For your organization, the journey started with the Medimix soap, right? It's a popular brand. I think the most popular brand. Now, it has diversified into several segments and product ranges. What role has technology played in this exponential growth? At every stage, understanding your consumers better, making sure your R&D for your next product is spot on. Looking at demand and also being able to meet that demand. So there are several layers to that. So to say.
Yeah, for us, digital is largely we are focusing on the marketing side, which is where our focus is all about. And as I mentioned, we are strong in the social media network. That's one area. Though television, the cost of television advertisement is pretty expensive, and the social media advertisement is far less cost when comparing with the television advertisement. So taking that into consideration, it is not that we can avoid television as a media, because television is only the most popular channel of advertisement even now in India. So that being the case, we cannot avoid television as a media, and so that's one important thing. And so the other thing is digital. We were spending something around 2 to 3% earlier years, but now we have almost doubled it in our spend level for the digital media. So that's one area of the thing. And we are also looked into the sales field automation, so that we are able to get data online. We're able to get the data in our office itself. That's one thing which we have started working on it. So these are the different areas of digital media. And as everybody suggested, we had when during the pandemic times, we were really in touch. All of us were really in touch with all our heads of departments and people who are in the thing. And of course, we use all the Zoom networks and team and all those things and networks to get connected with people. And so we were never felt that we missed our office working. And so we were all connected, and work was progressing the way it should progress, and we had success in our growth.
Great. Colonel Shankar, you have pioneered R&D in defense electronics, right? Can you take us through some of the milestones that digitization helped you achieve in this respect?
See, again, since we concentrate ourselves in the R&D with respect to the defense and aerospace area, I would like to give some examples on that. See, we are quite strong in the space segment. For example, any of the satellites that we make, and we do it along with ISRO. In fact, 2 of our major satellites are there up in the sky. And during that process and later on its own utilization, as R&D guys who are involved in that, also in development of certain software packages that were involved in its control, we found so many of the things that could be done, again, without physical intervention, and then through the digital means, software being the basic portion of that whole control systems. So that is one which gave a sort of a inkling as to how it could be utilized in our own day-to-day work with respect to the R&D. There are a few projects which, at the instance of our customer, we have taken up for what we call itself, the project itself is called as the digitization of a radar system. And in fact, this one is one of them is almost about 35-year-old radar, which radar system which Air Force is maintaining with the Soviet technology, which is very old. Most of them are analog systems. That whole thing has been digitized with respect to the complete remaking of the hardware, which was, some of them, believe me, were in, they were using the wall version of it, which hats off to the Indian Air Force that they were maintaining it and they were using it. So that is all being changed now. And in addition to that, there are lots of software portions of it, work portions of it were integrated. The third thing is on the C3I systems, what we call. that is command communication and integrated working systems. For example, most of even the fighter aircrafts or particularly the unmanned aerial vehicles are all controlled totally digitally and by means of not physically moving things and then moving it by means of software hardware integration out there in the open domain. And that is one thing which has expanded now. And in our own R&D where we work on this, so this is the total prioritization area. The two other aspects which we do in the R&D which has got a direct relevance is on what we call as the electronic warfare, where you have the surveillance systems and then the jamming systems and how it can be worked out as also an integrated system. That is where we concentrate upon to put in as much of digitization as possible. Communications itself, the most of the communication networks which are today in the Army, Navy, Air Force are all based on the earlier analog, now converted into semi-digital form. Even it is semi-digital, it has now been totally made out into what is called as the software-defined radios, where each of the radios are made out in the form of a waveform, which is called as an indigenous waveform, which defines that particular product and project. And it can be easily be controlled. And again, as I said, upgradation and things like that can be done across the air without physically going and maintaining that on the ground. So these are the areas in R&D we are working. And to be frank with you, this has helped us. In fact, in a way, pandemic has helped us in concentrating more and more on that.
So I think in some industry, in certain cases, the acceleration towards digitization has actually come at a boon. It's not, I mean, considering many industries have also been through a very hard time. This is a little sad topic, but but it has helped certain industries. And I think partially what you mentioned, right, being able to virtually test out and design products before really coming out with a physical form. Mr. Thulasiraj, with lockdowns being imposed, consultations moving online, what initiatives were taken to maintain business continuity? You spoke about a few of those already in the first question, but if you could talk about how you maintain business continuity over the past.
Yeah, a number of things. I think one, as an organization, we embraced digital technologies very early on. I think the first instance was way back in 1983. Even during the pre-PC era. So now we are completely digital. And with digital, I think the other side of it is vulnerability. And with medical information, you need to be extra cautious with protection and things like that. So one of the things that we paid a lot of attention now is from the point of view of business continuity from two angles. One's the security angle, because when you have care being given through 100 locations, you are becoming that much vulnerable. So we had to centralize the entire network through SD-WAN and those kind of technologies that are just emerging. Other one is paying attention to hardware redundancy and those kind of things. So from the digital front, I think that's been one big area of focus that we had to bring in. And then since you have the digital platform for delivery of care, that allows us to do a lot of things to kind of leverage that foundation that we have laid. Like, for example, we believe that in the caregiving process, your margin of error really is zero. So we need to really keep track of if you want to have a zero error service, we cannot be really reacting to an error after it happens, because sometimes you can't undo it. Unlike in a product where you can just scrap the product. So we are trying to put in a lot of algorithms and intelligence in place, for one, identifying exceptions, patterns, and also getting a little bit into predictive technologies. So that's an area that where we are working. I think the exception part is much more straightforward, algorithm driven. And another thing that we are working on, which we started about 15 odd years back, is to recognize that in healthcare, in all disciplines, there are multiple levels of care, which somehow has not been understood or recognized till now. Because primary care, all of us recognize, was largely confined to coughs and colds or maternity and pediatrics. It is almost as if it is cardiology or heart problems or brain problems or strokes. It all happens at the most extreme level, from being normal. It's not true, because people go through that path. If you can catch them early, you can deal with them early. So we are promoting this concept of primary eye care in a very big way. And that's been a strategic focus of us going forward. And towards that, the challenge is, how do you bring in the competence that you're able to have with the specialists in a large tertiary setup down to the villages. So that's an area where the digital technologies are helping us a lot. And as of now, we are partnering with Google to bring in these kind of AI-driven technologies right down to the rural centers. The very first product or service that's now being beta tested is checking people with diabetes, whether they have changes in the retina. Because the earlier you catch, we can actually completely make sure they don't lose any vision. The later it happens, I think the prognosis becomes more challenging. So now all that happens is a diabetic walks into a village center. We take an image of the retina and we just upload it to a cloud service. And then within 20-30 seconds, we get a reading back, which otherwise would have required this person to travel to one of the larger centers, wait for a whole day, an expert looks at the image, maybe 2-3 trips, all of that is gone. So something which would take probably a day or two now happens in a matter of 15-20 minutes. So we are now trying to kind of invent or innovate these kind of processes for multiple conditions and basically democratize healthcare.
Right.
So that's the approach that we are taking now.
Very interesting. I think the last part, democratizing healthcare through technology. I think that's really the entire golden word out of all of this. Coming to you, Mr. Palakkil, digitization is clearly no longer a choice, right? But a necessity. What Mr. Thulasiraj just said is very clear of that fact. So can you take us through the role it can play in an organization trying to build resilience? There are many organizations who are looking to make sure. This is one sort of pandemic is one calamity that has sort of struck across, right? But we need to be prepared. As a business, you don't know what can happen. Will it be a macro shock? Will it be specific to your industry? So how do you build resilience is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our panelist was actually mentioning about artificial intelligence and algorithms, which typically automates a lot of mundane tasks, and also gives much more accurate results than what probably a human could actually do, right? Because it's able to process a lot of data in a short amount of time. Coming back to digitization, which is much more a foundational thing that every organization looks at, first of all, right? It was always a necessity, like you mentioned, for the organization. It was always one of the line item that the organization wanted to achieve. Now, what this pandemic has actually done is it's actually catapulted that and put that in the number one priority for many of the organizations across the world. For example, the case in point is during this pandemic situation itself, we've seen a lot of customers who had some sort of digitization in place to quickly get their employees adapt to the new normal, and they were able to work from home. They were able to work effectively on a day-to-day things that one employee had ought to do, as against an organization which actually struggled, who are doing much more manual work. Digitization obviously helps in terms of taking the organization or preparedness of the organization to face any kind of things that we don't actually envisage, because something that we plan obviously we can prepare well. But some situations like this which comes in, actually technology, we have seen like, organizations actually use that to their benefit, right? The role that digitization actually plays in an organization, Raudra, is tremendous. Not only in resilience, right? Resilience, of course, it gives them the business continuity for the organization, but most importantly, it actually like, provides the competitive advantage for that organization in the market. Not to mention that it increases the productivity, like all of us have seen, even organizations like us, like, with all the technology that we have, right? In fact, like, that's a norm that we usually talk about, right? Employees are becoming more and more productive because we don't like, lose time in travel, or we don't lose time like, in even in like, offices, etc. And the most amount of time that is spent during this year has like, has been like, tremendous. Each one of us have put in our heart and soul, and like, organizations have realized that some simple things that digitization can bring in, which organizations have realized, is like, reduce operational cost, open up new market possibilities, and most importantly, it provides their customers a superior experience, right? That is what every organization thrives for. I need to give superior experience to my customers, right? And what does it does? It eventually like, strengthens the like, and enhances the brand value in the market. So digitization, like you said, is no longer a choice; it's absolutely a necessity.
Interesting. My last question is to Mr. Dixit. Before, I have an open question after that for all our speakers. It is known, Mr. Dixit, it is known that the pandemic created irregularities in terms of demand and supply, right? What strategies did you adopt to deal with these uncertainties faced by the packaging industry? You supply to a lot of companies that deal with end consumers, and of course, there have been it's been volatile, so to say, right?
Well, first of all, as a global company, we started to get the first whiff of the pandemic early up in Jan from the 8 plants that we have in China. And you would be almost pleasantly surprised that the first few SOPs that were launched by ALPLA in the rest of the countries, including India, including this hand sanitization and facility sanitization and distancing, was done by already mid-February. And by early March, we were preparing from work from home. So when Modi ji announced the first lock-in, we had already decided to work from home actually from that week. So there was zero disruption from that point of view. Of course, there was a huge disruption, as you pointed, on manufacturing because everything stopped. Now, we come under essential commodities because our products are used for hand soap, for food, for medicines, for pharma, and various other products. And by the way, we also contract manufacture hand soap in one of our facilities. So here I have to say that we decided on a 3-pronged strategy. Actually, the strategy was rolled out and then we gave it a name after a month, to be honest. We call it secure, strategize, and strike back. The secure part was to secure our people and facilities in that order, to make sure that people are safe. That's a non-negotiable. Strategize was how to support the supply chain and create also the right products. We never produced sanitizers till 1st of March worldwide because the category was so small. And you'll be surprised by middle of April, normally these product chains, and Pradeep would not in agreement, take 4, 5, 6 months to develop. In a lockdown condition, we developed 10 or 15 SKUs in 3 to 4 weeks, an unheard heroic act. And by early April, we were producing millions of these products. Our soap production went up by 3x. It was only by virtue of working very closely, of course, with our clients, with our supply partners, with the government. I have to tell that I was very pleasantly and happily surprised where we are in multiple locations. We deal with multiple governments. We could reach anyone to say, hey, we need to run this. Otherwise, liquid soap, one truck helps 75,000 people to wash their hands. We've actually got a picture of 10 trucks of liquid soap. And with a banner saying, ye 7,50,000 aadmiyon ke haath dhulwayega. And we had people having that pride. People was super critical. We were the only company that I know of who had a COVID hero ceremony on 22nd of June. We honored 130 people. We gave bonuses to 400, even though we lost crores during those months. So by working very closely with all the supply partners, supply chain elements, and most importantly, energizing our people, things just went crazy. Also small things. We got in policies. We of course have health cover, life insurance cover. We got a special policy. If anyone is found COVID positive, no hospitalization. Even if you are at home, you get 50,000. Top up policies, various other ways. People need to feel good. So with all this, what we found was that whilst many large companies that I know of had 40, 50% absenteeism, in our case, the people who didn't come to work were the people we said, guys, stay at home, you're fine. And of course, we did not ever allow even one single retrenchment or one single person to go with even one. We actually energized them by supporting them in every possible way. With all this, our supply chain efficacy was really, I would say, even better than in normal conditions. And then today, I have to say, when I look back, whilst many of my competitors failed our clients, we were one that was the go-to company in order to make this happen. My learning, business is not about anything else. As I have said it in many seminars, it's about three elements. All the three are people, people, and people. The rest is detail. So,
very interesting. My last question, and this is really for all our panelists today. Please, what are your strategic priorities for the next few months? Clearly, we're hoping that a vaccination is going to be there in a few months. We have a healthcare professional here who sort of maybe tell us more. But what are your strategic priorities for the next few months? How are you visualizing this? Do you expect us to sort of come out of this difficult period? And what would it mean? Maybe Colonel Shankar, if you would want to talk to us about it.
Yeah. See, we again, our priorities are, because we lost about 2 months to 3 months period of time. We always fix up, the previous year itself and the last quarter, what would be the targets to be achieved in our production, R&D, and services and all that.
Right.
So since there was disruption, our number one priority today has been how do we meet the target and, if possible, exceed it. One of the plus points are that tremendous incentives have been given by government for the industries to get up and then start not walking but running in this period of time, which has made considerable difference, not only to us but our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 companies also. And they're also are having the same sort of a motivation now, because in the short period, how do we do to produce more and more so that they support us and we support them? They get the money earlier, we get the money earlier, because we have a quicker supply chain and prepare for the next year and next target year. So in my opinion, with this sort of a situation that has arisen, particularly in the manufacturing and R&D in India, not necessarily in the defense, you will see a booming sort of a situation in the last quarter of this year. It will touch in the last quarter maybe much more than any other quarters had ever done in the previous years, and be in a position, majority of the companies, to meet their target, because we are Indians, we adjust ourselves, we are flexible, and the incentives are there and the will to succeed is there. So I think it will be a good augury for that way, and that is our concentration of doing more and more work in a shorter and shorter period of time. That's what is our concentration.
Interesting. Are you a listed company? Then we should be putting in money on your stock right now.
Yeah, we may be going in immediately after the results are announced after this quarter. So please register yourself, and certainly we will do that by end of this next year. We will be an IPO, God willing.
Wonderful. Mr. Thulasiraj, about your priorities for the next few months.
So there's this famous saying that you never let a crisis go waste, and this is a crisis of humongous scale. So I think one priority is that during this 8-9 months, we had to do things very differently, and I think there have been a lot of positives in it. Like, for example, the protocol for seeing a patient now is a lot more involved than the normal times, pre-COVID times. Which means you take more time, more effort. So we had to come up with a lot of very efficient processes so that with the same HR and other resources, we can process similar number of patients. So managing demand and smoothing demand and those kind of processes have been in place, and also really taking a deep look at on patients coming for repeat visits. Is there a value add? Can we minimize those visits for the patient and for us? So we have had a lot of strategic thought processes in terms of providing care to patients. In fact, better care at lower costs. So the one strategic thing is going to be to kind of mainstream those things, which may take another year or so for us to make it seamless. And the same is also happening with training as well, because we're also a pretty large training resource for eye care professionals, both for local and international students. So we are kind of exploring multiple technologies. Like for instance, a lot of our training is now becoming flipped. In the sense, a lot of the learning happens by the student, and a lot of the internalization discussion happens when they come into a classroom, whether it's virtual or whether it is in person. So deploying the digital platform with all of our village girls who join us for 2 years training and then get employed, they'll all be getting a tablet and all kinds of. So a lot of these things are going to be anchored around digital platforms. So that's a big area that we are looking forward to. And of course, all of this is to also grow the organization and to reach out to more people, those who need eye care.
Interesting. And Mr. Cholayil,
our strategic priorities, even in this pandemic times also, we are having a good growth in our business. And one of the most important thing was we had our face wash. We were planning to relaunch the face wash, in fact, in this financial year. And due to the pandemic reasons, we could not do. We, in fact, produced an interesting new film. We had a brand ambassador, Pradeep Chopra, as a brand ambassador. With Pradeep Chopra, we produced a new film, and we were not in a position to release the film because of the pandemic reasons. So now that's going to be our focus. We are planning to start relaunching the face wash, and we are betting on it. And also, it's very important that we launched a hand wash also. It's quite a challenge because hand wash is everywhere. You find every other brand has got a hand wash on their own. So it's really challenging to be disruptive enough to get the business of the hand wash. So these will be our areas of focus in the coming months.
So essentially, new product launches is going to be a major focus.
Yeah, new product launches also. Our R&D is continuously working on identifying and developing new innovative Ayurvedic products, and we are getting a good opportunity to sell and distribute our Ayurvedic products in the foreign markets also. We are most of the markets which we are present we are getting good opportunities in selling and distributing our products.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dixit, just sort of closing and the focus over the next few months.
So even before COVID, we had committed our largest single investment in the last 15 years. And we thought about whether we were on the right track, and me and my board, including our global partners, felt that we believe in India and we believe in the future. So we've gone full steam ahead, and I think we've done a good thing. As we move forward, I think the key imperatives will be designed for recycling. A lot of our packaging, especially in the flexible side, goes straight into landfill, and there's a lot of problem, especially in the FMCG space. We are in very advanced stages of launching products that can provide alternatives to sachets, and also for refill packs, which are super lightweighted and also 100% recyclable. We are also promoting in-house plants to be inside the client's premise, so there's no transport, no packaging between the supply chain, which saves hundreds and thousands of tons of carbon footprint. We have already 2 of these, and we are likely to add a few more. And we are already part of Ellen MacArthur Foundation pledge of being 100% producer of recyclable products. And in the next 4 years to have 25% PCR, which is post-recycling content in our products. And towards this, I think this will be the new mantra as we move forward. And we are very excited about trying to be a leader in this journey of responsible consumption.
Very interesting, especially on the packaging industry. There's a big onus to sort of make that change for the packaging industry. I think it's great that this work is happening. A question on the in-house plants, though, doesn't it sort of work on the opposite logic of scale, right? If you have individual plants at each manufacturer rather than one plant making it for many.
That's a great question, Roudra. Out of 181 plants of ALPLA worldwide, 71 are inside client premises.
Okay.
And the beauty is, of course, the scale of a large plant doesn't match with a small, but the cost of transport and packaging well nullifies the a little bit extra cost of having dedicated machines inside a plant. And you imagine 7 to 10 days, 15 days of supply chain of storage on both sides and trucks running for no rhyme or reason with packaging. We are going, in fact, one step forward. In Silvassa, we'll have integrated manufacturing. We would produce the package, we would fill the product, we would label it and supply it together, completely end to end. This will be our first worldwide, and it's going to happen right here in India.
So you're essentially taking the manufacturing as a contract from the entire, from the manufacturing.
End to end, yes, yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. This is great. You know, I'm just going to quickly summarize what we spoke about today, and then close our discussion. My first question was about digital tools which are indispensable, and especially over the last few months. Mr. Cholayil spoke about social media, the huge focus on social media advertisement, and focusing on e-commerce platforms as an advertisement, because more and more users have been active on social media and e-commerce platforms such as Amazon and Flipkart. Mr. Dixit spoke about the fact that plants are already digitized, but one of the biggest things that have happened over the past few months is the maintenance that has been happening remotely, right? I mean, there are engineers from Australia who are able to fix plants, fix problems, machinery remotely from there. And this is something that not only Mr. Dixit mentioned, but also Colonel Shankar mentioned about remote maintenance for machinery with our army, with our troops that have been done by engineers sitting offsite. From Mr. Ravilla, and a lot of good conversation about what the healthcare space and the eye care space is especially doing. So definitely technology has played a major role in terms of teleconsultation. As far as Aravind Eye Hospitals is concerned, I think you already had teleconsultation from a B2B lens, but this was expanded to a B2C model as well, and very rapidly. Apart from that, a scheduling process was put in place using technology, so as not to sort of bunch up users at one time. There's a tendency for many patients to come in at 10 a.m., but when you're doing it digitally, it creates a lot more problems. So how do you sort of organize that? Colonel Shankar mentioned that certain software tools had been made available to employees at home, but more importantly for management, a lot of things had moved digitally: negotiation, materials management, etc. And of course, the fact that helping in remote maintenance for our troops. We asked Mr. Palakkil, what are the digital tools that cannot be ignored today? And Mr. Palakkil said that you need to first understand the organizational goals, and then what tools can help to make it more efficient and effective. every company would need to look at its functions, and there are definitely digital can play a role across all functions. You really need to figure out what your priority is, and that will go a long way. We asked Colonel Shankar, how has digitization helped you in pioneering R&D? It has been important for space projects where you're able to design in a virtual environment. Colonel Shankar also spoke about digitization of Soviet technology on radars, on electric warfare, communication technology for aircraft. And these are areas where the pandemic has really helped accelerate work that was already happening. And many of these things are going to remain for the future as well. Our next question was on how do we maintain business continuity, and this was to Mr. Thulasiraj. And this is where Mr. Thulasiraj spoke about how the organization had been digital early on, but in terms of business continuity, security has been a focus area for cash transactions, etc. Also, in healthcare, the margin of error is zero. So a lot of algorithms are being put in terms of and also prediction technology to make sure that the service being provided is top notch and there's zero room for error. We also asked Mr. Dixit, how did you deal with the uncertainty? And I think the one big focus for Mr. Dixit was people, and only people. How do you protect your people first? You honor them. You make sure that that they're being recognized, they're being respected. You're taking care of them, and that really helps your company throughout. As a result, I think the supply chain efficacy was even better than normal, is what Mr. Dixit mentioned. So my last question was really priorities for the next few months. Colonel Shankar mentioned that 2-3 months have been lost as a result of the pandemic. The main priority right now is to get up and running and produce more in a shorter period, make up for the time lost. I think the Q4, the Jan-March quarter is something to watch out for. And in case you hold stock of the company, this is the time to speed up on your investment. Mr. Thulasiraj spoke about a lot of positives of this past few months of how things have been done differently. One of the areas is how protocols for handling senior patients has better evolved. There is a lot of thought going into how do we reduce repeat visits, provide better care at lower cost. This is of course the core philosophy behind Aravind Eye Hospitals, and finally training. How do we improve training using multiple technology, which is happening, of course, virtually largely today. Mr. Cholayil mentioned the big focus going ahead is going to be one, of course, relaunching certain products with your new brand ambassador, right? I mean, Pariniti Chopra. This is the face wash and a hand wash, but also looking at expanding overseas distribution as an opportunity. Lastly, Mr. Dixit mentioned in terms of the focus for the next few months is a big focus on sustainability. I think this is great to hear. The design is being done keeping recycling in mind. A lot of new packaging products are about to get launched very soon, which have better recycling possibilities. But most importantly, a big change in strategy where the manufacturing for packaging for many of for the customers, such as the essential good makers, FMCG companies, the packaging is going to move inside their premises, thereby saving on transportation costs, of course, lower fossil fuel burn, and improving the carbon footprint. This was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot to our panelists for joining in and taking the time out today. This obviously is the end of our chat, but we will be back with another episode in our series, Hit Refresh. Big shout out to SAP for partnering with us for this series. This is us signing off. Stay well and take care.